In order to allow users to select CSS classes for particular elements in a wysiwyg, there are several steps we need to take. First of all, we need to enable the format selector within our wysiwyg in order to supply that drop-down that shows a list of the classes that can be used. Next, we need to create a style sheet for the classes that we want to be able to be used within a wysiwyg. Then we need to set that style sheet to be the one that's used within the wysiwyg, and we'll explain how that works in just a moment. And then, as an extra step, we can supply aliases for the styles if we want to create some names that make a little bit more sense to the end user. Okay, let's go ahead and begin the process by looking at our options in the wysiwyg profile. What I'm going to do is go up to Configuration, and let's go ahead and go to wysiwyg. Again, this is under Content Authoring, right here. We're going to be editing the Site Editor wysiwyg profile. Okay, now we went through the options for the wysiwyg before, but let's go ahead and review the options inside of the CSS collapsible field set here. So the options that are going to come into play with these next steps are Editor CSS, CSS Path, and CSS Classes. So this Editor CSS allows us to specify which CSS is going to be used within the wysiwyg. So the important thing to understand is that the style sheets that apply to the rest of the site don't necessarily apply within the wysiwyg box itself. The styles that that box uses is determined by this setting right here, and it says to use the theme CSS, which means that as you compose within the wysiwyg, it should look pretty similar to the way the content will look once it's output on the page. However, we have a couple of other options here. We can define CSS and use the editor default CSS. The editor default CSS is a style sheet that comes with the editor. That's a good general style sheet to use that supplies some basic styles that makes the content look nice, but not necessarily look the way it will look on your site. And then define CSS allows us to use this second input here in order to define a location to the CSS file that's going to be used to supply the styles for our wysiwyg. Once we do that, if we enable a particular plugin, then we get a drop-down of the different classes that are available to us through that style sheet, and that can be applied simply by selecting the element and then selecting the class that should apply to it. So now that we understand how the configuration works, let's go ahead and set up a style sheet for us to use. And just like we have in previous examples, let's go ahead and use the CSS injector.